Coming up next on Tech News Today, Apple announced the HomePod, High Sierra, and an iMac for pros, and some other stuff we'll talk about. Also, Fitbit lost a bunch of ground in the wearable space. Palmer Luckey is getting into the homeland security business and getting to know the students of code. All that and more coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit. Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1782, recorded Monday, June 5th, 2017.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home plays a big role in your life. That's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. It lets you apply simply and understand the entire mortgage process fully so you can be confident that you're getting the right mortgage just for you. Get started at rocketmortgage.com/TNT.
And by Oars and Alps, powerful skincare made for a guy's active lifestyle. Join thousands of men using Oars and Alps today. Go to oursandalps.com/twit to receive 15% off your first order.
And by Tracker, a coin-sized tracking device that pairs with your smartphone and keeps you from losing your most valued possessions. Visit thetracker.com right now and enter promo code TNT to save 20% on any Tracker package. Welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we tell you every last thing you need to know about technology.
And Apple.
And Apple. We got some other topics besides Apple to talk about.
But you've been talking about Apple all day.
Yes. On iOS Today that I hosted with Nate, he was wearing a Gilligan's hat for our app cap. And I was discussing that, we did go on a 6-hour tour of
It just
iOS.
keeps going.
We're going to give you the maybe 4-minute version of that tour.
Okay.
But if you want the longer version, you can download iOS Today at twit.tv. And if you want the even longer version, download the Twit Live special. And if you want the even longer version, I don't know, head to San Francisco or San Jose and go to the WWDC conference yourself.
Go find Tim Cook on the street and ask him what he thinks about every single announcement, and you'll get the long version.
Yeah, do that.
If he stops to talk to you.
So, as you may or may not know, you're about to know now, Apple held its annual Worldwide Developers Conference keynote today. It was chock full of some good stuff. We'll start with the big news first, the HomePod.
HomePod.
That is the rumored Siri speaker that will be available in December. Apple recently pushed this. They really pushed the sound quality of the device with its 7-speaker array of tweeters. That's a musical thing, tweeters, not people tweeting on Twitter. You probably know this, Jason, and most of you also know that, but it's not actual people tweeting inside, although that would be wonderful. Also, real-time acoustic spatial awareness that will determine the room that it's in.
Look at that.
And play music accordingly. The device will, of course, also work as a home assistant like Amazon's Echo and Google Home. So it was one of those many moments that happened in the keynote.
Is it a one more thing?
No, it was another thing.
Another
thing. He said
thing.
he was going to have 6 things, and he had 6 things.
Okay.
So he really wants to be, he's being more honest. More honest, Tim Cook. A more honest Apple. But it was one of those moments where they come out with a thing, and everyone's clapping, and oh, wow. And, of course, there's all the dissenters who say, everybody has that already. And this one it's usually something more simple, but this is a big one. I mean, most people know that Amazon already has a home speaker and Google already has a home speaker. And of course, they're just coming in 3rd place. But the big question is, will it become more popular because it automatically syncs with Apple Music, because it's Apple, because it's pretty, because it sounds better? I don't know. I mean, I think the sound better thing, I think we've learned that there's not a ton of people who care about that. I mean, there's a lot of people who care. I guess a ton. If you put them all on a scale, they would weigh a ton, of course. But percentage-wise,
we're not going to try. We're not going to test that theory, but
percentage-wise, and especially newer, younger generations are not as concerned with sound quality.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people that are, I want sound quality, I want good speakers. But also there's the question of, could you get speakers that cost Less than this, probably.
Yeah.
It's $360.
Yeah, it's right around there.
Yeah.
You know, Apple creates premium hardware. That's their brand, is that they create premium hardware, and there's a lot of people that are willing to pay the extra price because it has an Apple logo on it. And by the way, because they do a really good job building hardware. Like you saw the internals of this thing, and like my top note here was just that Apple hardware under the hood is fascinating to me. It's so cool to look at it and see how they develop their hardware in-house. Of course, that's all under the hood, and that's nerdy stuff. But I'm always fascinated when I see that. Yeah, I mean, and you know, they're doubling down on the idea that this isn't necessarily a home assistant competitor first. Siri's in there, and you could do that, and I'm sure over time that will get expanded into other functionality to kind of go toe-to-toe, hopefully, you know, from their perspective, against Amazon Echo and the Google Home. But they're really focusing on that sound quality aspect, and that this is a speaker first and foremost. It's almost more of a competitor to a Sonos system, like the Sonos Play 3, instead of, you know, a competitor to Echo. But Engadget was there. Chris Velasco said and he got to kind of listen to the difference, and he said if listening to the HomePod was like listening to a CD, then audio through the Echo sounded like an AM radio. And, you know, I mean, there's a big cost difference between those two. I think you're absolutely right. For some people, for many people, having, you know, a $150 device that plays music when you need it to, and that's good enough, is going to be perfectly fine. But yeah, there are people that will buy it because it's an Apple branded device and because it actually probably sounds really great.
Yeah, and I mean, they also push the idea that it's a musicologist in your home. So, you know, it will recommend songs that you need to be listening to. It will know, you know, what songs you're asking for and that sort of thing.
Do you think Apple releasing it as speaker first, Siri second, that's some sort of an admission on Apple's part that they realize that Siri is not as strong as it probably could be, or do you think they'd push it the same if Siri was stronger?
Well, I mean, it's just a really different market. So there's three big ones, right? There's the Amazon Echo, the Google Home, and then this HomePod. And if you think about these companies, we always lump them together, but their goals and their, you know, the companies themselves are very different. Their bottom line is different. You know, I mean, Apple sells,
how they generate their business, the data behind it, all that. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but and you know, I always talk about like Amazon's also trying to sell toilet paper. Like, am I going to be able to buy paper towels and toilet paper through my HomePod? But I don't know. I don't think that Apple really cares that much about that. That's not their bottom line, nor is it Amazon's bottom line. I mean, Amazon and Google are, you know, very interested in the cloud, and Google's very interested in advertising. So really, I mean, if they're it makes sense that there's good hardware inside because they sell hardware and they want to keep people in the ecosystem. And it is not a big deal for me to say to my Amazon Echo, pair Bluetooth. And then, you know, I have access to everything on my iPhone. I have Apple Music. But, you know, I think for some people it would just be nice to say, you know, play the Beatles, you know, play the most popular song in 1979, you know, play that song that I like that was, you know, in the soundtrack to, you know, It's a Wonderful Life, or, you know, and Siri is good at those things. So, you know, there's a lot of things that she's not good at, but she is good at those things.
Yeah, that might be enough. Also, should mention before we move on, they kind of pointed out kind of the security aspect of this, that it's not listening to everything that you say. It only responds to, hey, S, I will just say that. And then, you know, it wakes up and that's the only thing that it sends, which I think is really actually no different than the others. It's not like Google Home or Amazon Echo is constantly sending everything you say up to the cloud. Well, it's also monitoring for the wake word.
That is up for debate, I think. That
based on proof or based on suspicion? Based
on proof and research, because I think sometimes it is always listening, and because they've done right for the wake word. But sometimes if you, I think that, I don't know. I need to do some more research on this. It's been a long day.
I understand.
I think that I think they have proven that they are listening a little bit before, just to know. I don't know how we know this, but
okay. I will say that one thing that I see from what they're doing here is that they're encrypting everything that gets sent up, but not only that, they're anonymizing all of those voice commands, and I think that's that's kind of a big deal. And actually what you were talking about earlier, as far as like the different companies having their own kind of priorities along the way, Apple's priority is not knowing every single thing about you. That never has been. That is definitely what Google is all about, with their kind of vast amounts of storage of data about you and how you browse the internet and everything like that. So their strengths are different. So Apple can then anonymize, completely anonymize these voice commands and detach it from your account, and it just doesn't matter. Whereas with Google, it matters a lot. So,
well, I guess if Google, Google has to know that you said hey first, right? So then isn't it always listening?
Well, but that's what I guess that's the differentiation. How does Apple do that then if it's not listening? It also has to know. So
it's always listening, but not sending the information.
The difference is, what is it actually sending? And I think the reality on these devices is that it has to always have that mic open to catch that wake word. Otherwise, it would never hear it. What does it then send? I think there's a perception that some of these home devices are constantly sending an endless stream of data up into the cloud, and I don't think that's actually happening. They're listening on device, and once they hear what they need to hear, then that query is sent into the cloud.
Okay, well, if you guys know, send us an email, tnt@twit.tv, because I had thought that it was constantly listening and sending, but not doing anything with it, but it was always there, because that was the case with the guy who they were going to use that information, like what happened right before and what happened right after with his Amazon Echo, that they had all that information and they could use it or not use it. But that case never went because the guy, I guess, he went ahead and said, yeah, take whatever you want, because there was nothing. There weren't, they were listening, but I wasn't saying like, how do you murder someone?
Which you probably don't want to say that. Just a little tip.
So they also talked about the latest version of Mac OS called High Sierra. It's available as a developer update today, a public beta this summer, and then available to all later in the year. It includes a more modern file system, APFS, which is also included in iOS. Safari will include autoplay blocking and intelligent tracking prevention. That's basically some do not track features that most other browsers already have. For pro content creators, there's Metal 2 and Metal for VR. So
Metal for VR. Finally, VR on Mac for developers, right?
For developers. So developers could create. It's not, it's not like everyone's saying like I'm going to get a Mac and be able to, use my Oculus on it or anything. So they didn't list Oculus support. They did list support for Vive and then the Unreal Engine for VR. I'm assuming that means you could get this and run an Oculus or an HTC Vive off of it if you're using it as a developer platform, and you have a cool $5,000 to spend to start if you happen to be getting what we'll talk about in the next story, because it's not cheap to get in on a system that's built out to the sense that it could handle that type of stuff. But yeah, it's good to see those features integrated in. Also the file system, which I guess iOS has this new file system that was announced last year, the Apple file system, kind of built for speed, for SSDs, for flash. Now that's being integrated into High Sierra. I have to get used to saying High Sierra. It's kind of a funny name. It is kind of a funny name. They did make some weed jokes. That was
on stage.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's all I got.
Apple will ship new MacBooks, new MacBook Pros, and iMacs today, starting around $1,300. But the big news is what's coming in December, a $5,000 new iMac Pro with a space gray finish, a 5K display, up to an 18-core Xeon processor, up to a 4 terabytes of SSD, up to 128 gigabytes of ECC memory, 4 Thunderbolt 3 ports, and built-in 10 gigabyte Ethernet and a lot gigabit Ethernet. Thank you, Burke. And a lot of teraflops of something.
Lots of teraflops in the box.
Lots of teraflops flopping all over the place.
So $5,000 for this beast, which is it's interesting to me how some of their categories kind of intercept and cross over each other's line, because they're saying this is the most powerful Mac in existence right now, but it's still an iMac, and they still have plans to have their Mac Pros come out at the end of this year or the beginning of next year or whatever. Like, they're being very vocal about the fact that you're going to be able to get an impressive beast of a Macintosh for production, or high end like video production needs or whatever it is you need all those teraflops for. That's coming down the line, but that right now this iMac, which is normally like kind of a consumer, less focused on the high end specs, more on like the convenience and beautiful factor, and now you kind of get both. This is a beautiful machine.
Yeah, it's not available now. It's available in December. So yeah, and then I think they really listened when people said they were ignoring the Mac users,
it really
and they were
seems that
ignoring creators, and they were playing. They're just saying like, here's this giant machine that you can spend $5,000 on, or your boss can spend $5,000 on.
Probably your boss.
and there's more to come. We haven't forgotten you. It sounded like that was a lot. Brighter displays, and you cannot get that space gray mouse or keyboard with any other of the computers besides this iMac
So
Pro.
if you are all in on anything space gray, you're buying a $5,000 iMac. That's just your choice. They also, by the way, MacBook Air is still a thing. They didn't get rid of that. I just kind of thought they were going to get rid of that. But
they threw it out. They threw up one mention, but then didn't show it, didn't talk anything more about it.
It's still around. Whatever.
Yeah,
you don't want it anyways. It's okay.
The Apple Watch and iOS 11 for iPhone and iPad will get some new and exciting features this fall. And today, if you are a developer for Apple Watch, you'll get a smarter Siri reminding you of things it thinks you might want to know, a long-awaited flashlight on the watch, and some improved fitness features. And if you've ever wanted to do other workouts besides walking, running, biking, or swimming, you're in luck. I mean, you could do those workouts before. You just wouldn't get credit for them, so what's the point? iOS on your phone will include a Do Not Disturb While Driving tool that will automatically turn on when your car connects to Bluetooth.
Nice.
Your phone will send a text response that says you're driving, and then it says if this is urgent, reply urgent, so it'll come through if you need it to. And if you happen to have your phone connected to Bluetooth in a car, if you're a passenger, you can just say, I'm not driving.
Yeah,
so,
I love that feature. I have an app that does that on Android, and I love it. It means I don't ever touch my phone when I'm driving if something comes through.
Yeah, Android Auto did that.
Auto does that also,
I love that. And, it's just a different screen, just that extra reminder that I need. Just because your brain, your Apple Watch haptic feedback takes over, and you think you need to look at it and you don't. And I'm as guilty as anyone. So I'm happy for this. We've had this discussion. People don't like to be forced to do anything. And so if you are one of those people, you can turn it off. If you are driving, you can say, I'm not driving. That's up to you. We still live in a free country. But I am happy for more people who will use this as just another reminder to single task, omnitask when you're driving.
I like that. I like that phrase. Siri also getting, like you said, some improvements around speech, clearer human speech, clearer intonations, also a bunch of translation support so you can cross-translate between languages. And then follow-up questions. I think that's kind of a big deal in improving Siri, right? I feel like that's one big strength of Assistant is that you can kind of go down a path of kind of being a little bit more conversational by following up on things and having it understand what you were talking about from the previous set of queries that actually ties into it. It makes it a little bit more human.
Yeah, that was definitely another one of those moments where, as an Android user, you could say like, we've had this, guys. But same with being able to speak translations. That's something that's in Assistant that I've been using on Assistant on the iPhone. If you say, where is the bathroom? How do you say, where is the bathroom in Chinese? It will say it. So you can say it again instead
of
just...
go up to someone and go, play. And just hold up the phone.
Or you could repeat it, or you could press play, but you could repeat it as opposed to it just saying like, here's what I found on the web about where's the bathroom in Chinese. Not helpful, Siri. The iOS 11 on the iPad had some really exciting features, made me want to try again to give this up and try to use my iPad Pro as a laptop. There's a file system. So not very sexy to talk about, the file system and being able to view your files in list form. But it's exciting if you really need to use your iPad as a production tool, whatever, if you're a writer or any kind of creator, being able to see your files, doing drag and drop They called it a drag fest, which I think some people, especially in our neck of the woods, would consider not something else a drag fest. But you can drag everything everywhere if you want to, which is good because they promised all these multitasking features last year, the year before, and they're still wonky. So I'm hoping for an improvement. In that searchable handwriting and notes. So if you still know how to write by hand or with your Apple Pencil, you can write notes, and then they're searchable on your iPad, which is great. And presumably they're searchable across iCloud since notes are also in the iPhone. What else? There was, here's something they did not get up on stage and announce, but I saw in Axios. Facebook and Twitter will now be treated as different apps in iOS. They used to have a little bit more access. You could, like through the Photos app, you could post something to Twitter or Facebook more
directly.
Yeah, easily. Okay. And they're going to withdraw that, which I thought was an interesting thing that was uncovered. They'll have to rely on the same sharing extensions. And I know your month with iOS, you probably learned that they don't make it easy to share. Yeah,
that was definitely one of the things that I noticed. But I didn't realize that they had a special kind of relationship with Twitter and Facebook. It's probably fair to put them on the same level as other developers who are trying to do the same thing. So.
Also, a redesigned App Store, which was they promoted it as more discoverable, but I saw it more as like discovering more about the apps. It looks like Apple Music, or it looks like basically a magazine where you'd look through and read about the creators of Monument Valley, because that's another thing. Monument Valley 2 came out today, but
only for iOS.
But they didn't say anything. They didn't say any improvements about search, which I would like to be able to search in the App Store and not get garbage.
We all want that when we search, to not get garbage. So I think that's a lofty goal.
Quick reminder, you can comment on anything we discuss by emailing tnt@twit.tv. And of course, subscribe to Tech News Today by going to our show page at twit.tv/TNT. After the break, more tech news. Not about Apple, but first, let's take a minute to thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans, the sponsor of this episode. The mortgage experience was not keeping up with the times, my friends. It was dated. It needed a client-focused technological revolution, and that's why Quicken Loans created Rocket Mortgage. Rocket Mortgage gives you the confidence that you need when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing loan. It's simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. It's convenient. Share your financial information with Rocket Mortgage at the touch of a button. It is powerful. So whether you're looking to buy your first home or your 10th, Rocket Mortgage is able to perform thousands of calculations in seconds. Based on your income, assets, and credit, Rocket Mortgage can analyze all of the home loan options for which you qualify and then find the right one for you, just for you, customized. Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Apply simply, understand fully, mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/TNT. That's rocketmortgage.com/TNT. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS consumeraccess.org, number 3030. And we thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans for their support of Tech News Today.
All right, a few more news items, because Apple wasn't the only one making news today. Fitbit, once, or still kind of a competitor to Apple, at least in one category, was once the top of the world when it came to wearables and how fast things change. According to new data from IDC, Fitbit dropped from the top of the wearable market a year ago, just 1 year ago, at 23% of all unit sales, down to third place now at 12%. Taking its place are Apple and Xiaomi, who both tied for the top of the heap at 15% each. Fitbit's stock is down more than 6% for the year, reaching its lowest point last week at around $5.42 per share. Overall, IDC says the wearable market grew 18% throughout the year. So apparently, Fitbit is not capitalizing on that growth nearly as well. They had an all-time high of $51.90 when they were kind of riding the wearable wave. And then, I don't know, like we've heard a little bit about their smartwatch that's more than just a fitness band that would be coming out, but that's been plagued apparently by kind of production issues on the back end. There were production issues last year, and brands like Xiaomi, at least on the low end, are doing low-end wearables really well and really like inexpensive by comparison, so it's hard to compete there. And of course, you've got the top end, which is Apple with the Apple Watch, and they're dominating it first.
Right. I mean, they really suffered in China, really like a lot of reduced demand in China. And there were some manufacturing mistakes that they made. And also the price came down on the Apple Watch. So that was helpful. And when the Apple Watch came out, it was like a lot, it was expensive. And a lot of people were like, talking about the $10,000 gold watch, and when they came out with Apple Watch 2, there was no $10,000 gold watch. There was the $3,000 ceramic watch, but that was a little bit different. Prices on Apple Watch 1 came down. There were more features, and they continue to develop. And it's just people criticize the Apple Watch because they say you don't need it, but it's not a need. It's not like an iPhone. You don't need it, but maybe people want it, and they clearly do because they're buying it. Yeah,
and there's a certain category that seek out kind of that higher end, and it's there for them. I misspoke saying 6%. Thank you, Burke. It's 60%, so I left off the 0, which is a lot more than 6.
The stock is down 60%.
Yeah, their stock is down 60% for the year. So, they're just they're taking their hits right now. Let's see if it turns around for them.
Palmer Luckey is back and prouder than ever for not conforming to the political beliefs shared by much of the rest of liberal Silicon Valley. According to the New York Times, the Oculus founder is working on a defense startup that the New York Times is calling a virtual border wall. The surveillance technology is designed for borders between countries and around military bases. And according to their sources, Trump advisor Peter Thiel is leading the funding. Luckey, of course, left Facebook, who had bought Oculus, earlier this year after journalists revealed that he had donated some of his fortune to an organization whose purpose was to create anti-Hillary Clinton memes. So he's now more vocal. He was very quiet after that, but now he's more vocal about his political beliefs. I encourage anyone to be vocal about their political beliefs. And, there's a lot of just like, he can no longer be the face behind virtual reality because he doesn't conform to what we decide is the right political belief. So I don't agree with that. I think that it's an interesting technology. I think I'm not sure how they're going to use it. They're going to use LiDAR, which is, the self-driving car technology to, I guess, as a border wall. So that is something that we have to look forward to in the future, perhaps. And Luckey also has been described as a casual doomsday prepper. So we heard about those people in Silicon Valley that are, prepping for the. He is one of them.
He's bought a lot of property in a lot of different places to kind of prepare for something like that.
So
he's
he
also
could create a wall around his own
potential,
little mansion.
And he could use his own technology there too. Which is actually only half in jest because this is actually. Sure, it could be applied to some sort of a border wall. It could also be just a general, like machine learning driven security system for any sort of perimeter. From reading into it, it really reminded me a lot of what we were talking about last week with the Nest Cam IQ. It's very similar in that it's able to, based on what this is about, obviously we don't have the details, but it's a combination of LiDAR and cameras that can kind of detect and tell the difference between a human and, say, a coyote, or be able to detect that thing in the air is not a bird and in fact it's a drone, and be able to target those things. And the way that Palmer Luckey feels that this would be less expensive than, in this case, building a wall south of the United States is to mount these things on telephone poles throughout. So apparently he's had meetings with some folks in the Trump administration, Steve Bannon as one. It doesn't sound like they've necessarily snapped at it quite yet, but I suppose we'll see where that heads.
Yeah, they have confirmed that he has a defense startup. So, if you didn't see the piece on the doomsday preppers in Silicon Valley, it was really interesting. And it got a lot of people talking about these Silicon Valley millionaires and how whether they're conservative or liberal, a lot of them were just sort of obviously planning, like you said, buying up land in different places and just sort of planning for the day where they would just take care of their own. And, if the worst happened, they would go move to this island or, just they're storing up whatever. And it was scary to people because these are the people that are creating the tools that we use every day in every way of our life. And when you really look at them and say, oh yeah, if worse came to worse, they would not, they do not have our best interest in heart. So yeah, it's an interesting news story, and I guess I'm looking forward to seeing what Palmer Luckey will do next.
It made me wonder, what if someday in the future we see Zuckerberg versus Luckey for president of the United States?
That sounds very like Ready Player One.
You never know. Hey, they're both in VR and video games and stuff. It could happen. Amazon's Fire Phone fizzled quickly when it first debuted in 2015, but apparently that fire never went out entirely. Sources to the NDTV site say that Amazon is working to have another go at its own branded smartphone with a close eye on emerging markets. The devices are internally dubbed ICE. So maybe that's like a branding shift. Maybe it's just a code word at this point. It won't actually be named that if and when it comes out. They would feature low-tier specifications. It would serve those markets with a minimal price point. Some of the reports are around $93 when converted from Indian rupees. Interestingly, the devices, at least interesting to me, the devices would have Google Mobile Services, this GMS support, which would be a major change in how Amazon approaches its Android-based devices. That essentially means that Amazon would allow the Play Store onto the device. It would be required to let Google's services on there, the kind of required apps that you usually find on an Android device that has the Play Store. So, Maps, messages, just like their suite of apps that come with Android's devices following the GMS standard. That would be a big change from what Amazon has done already, because Amazon is very much at this point in its tablet approach, and then also in its Fire Phone approach a few years back, really kind of centered around Amazon's App Store primarily, and all of Amazon's services ahead of it.
And that was why it failed. I mean, that was one of the big reasons it failed, not having Google mobile support services.
I mean, that would certainly be one reason, is that I think a lot of people look for, with a lot of these devices, to have Amazon or Google services on there. And if they're not, then that might be a deterrent. But the Fire Phone just kind of in itself was very gimmicky. It had these four front-facing cameras that would allow for this kind of, faux 3D view when you're looking at the display. It had a lot of gimmickry to it, and it failed pretty quickly as a result of that.
One of the most fascinating things about the Fire Phone to me is that how quickly the Amazon Echo came after the Fire Phone.
Yeah.
Like it was like rose from the ashes of the Fire Phone. Here's this thing that so many people are putting in their houses at the same time we were just like, Fire Phone, and it was the butt of jokes. And, you can see where like Fire tablets, to me, their mission is, especially there's so many of them designed for children. So when I look at it from the outside, it's like, get these devices in the hands of children, get them used to being in Amazon's ecosystem, so they'll become Prime members, they'll use their cloud services, we'll have a customer for life. And it sounds to me like this new Fire Phone would be really to go to, you had the price in rupees. So like to get to India, to get to places that really need a mobile device, don't have a desktop, they're not like handing over their tablets to their children so that they can only watch Sesame Street. It's a different reason, but they're getting, get Amazon into everyone's home, into everyone's hands in the entire world as quickly as possible. And then, Jeff Bezos will be running for president against Palmer Luckey and Mark Zuckerberg.
Man, this is just getting more and more crazy up at the top. I think that's exactly it. Amazon, it's very easy to kind of have our Western-centric view of the power of Amazon and the reach of Amazon, which, by the way, is pretty darn impressive. Amazon's an amazing company when it comes to that. But there are, in fact, a lot of markets that Amazon is not primary to, and I think the Indian market is one of those. And so, hey, what better way than to get really low-cost devices in there, and you've got a conduit for Amazon.
Speaking of cell phones, our cell phone providers know where we're going. They know where we've been. It's something a lot of us don't spend a lot of time thinking about, but the police do. They have wanted to obtain this information without a warrant, and now the Supreme Court will decide whether or not law enforcement should be required to obtain warrants to get data on the past locations of criminal suspects based on cell phone use. So this was a major digital privacy rights case just announced today that the Supreme Court will consider this. Does the Constitution protect our data revealing a cellular telephone's location? It's an important question that I'm looking forward to seeing what their answer is. So this is based on a man who was convicted of robbery partly because of evidence that his cell phone connected to specific equipment and provided location information of where he was at the time. And appeals court had previously ruled that authorities didn't have to get warrants to obtain this information. But a lot of people in the privacy community feel that they do need to. And, we will see. Yeah,
it depends. Like, this is definitely one of those cases where it's taking old law and applying new, like the realities of now and the technology that we have now, and trying to figure out whether it actually applies now or not. There were a couple of cases. You mentioned the appeals court case, which was, let's see here, the Katz versus... No, sorry. So there was a Supreme Court precedent from 1967, that's Katz versus the United States, where they said what a person knowingly exposes to the public, even in his own home or office, is not a subject of Fourth Amendment protection. And then Smith versus Maryland of 1979, where a person has no legitimate expectation of privacy in information he voluntarily turns over to third parties. So what is the information that's being turned over when, by having location on your phone, it's pinging to a cell tower and basically leaving a trail, leaving a map of the places that you've been? They're saying here, from what I understand, sure, the data that you send, like the messages that you send and all that kind of stuff from your phone, sure, that's protected, but but your phone number or your IP address pinging these things it's almost like a mailing address. Like, everybody knows that, and so that's easy to dive into and find and reap the benefits of, which, in this case would be tracking someone around. So it'll be interesting to see what the Supreme Court, where they fall down on this, because it's like old law versus kind of new reality, I suppose. And it's not like it's not like if you go into Google services and turn off location tracking, or go into your apps and turn off location tracking. It's not that. This isn't something you can turn off. Right. Like, we're making an agreement with our cell phone company every time, like, just to get to use this device, that it knows where we are and where we're going, where we've been, and saves that information. And so I do think, we are constantly faced with these metaphors that fall short. Is it is encryption is it a safe? Is it, a dog at your door? Is it, it doesn't make sense. You can't apply it. So I am really interested to see what this precedent will be, what the Supreme Court will say. And Burke has something to say too. Burke says if location was turned off, you should need a warrant. If on, nope, no warrant. But I think that's not what we're talking about. But the real challenge here, is just in the fact that I have a cell phone with a SIM card. In order to operate, pings these towers as I go through the country. As I drive through the country, it pings those towers, and every ping leaves a mark and leaves a trail. Do they have access to that information, or is that my private information? Yeah. So what you're saying is, if you turn on your phone, then it's okay. Like, basically, that's what it is. Like, if yeah. So we'll see. We'll see where that leads. Feedback time. Dave wrote into TNT at twit.tv to say, on Friday's episode, while talking about phone battery life, Jason simulated being at a club but doing some dancing. Megan took this opportunity to, sorry, you missed my dancing. It's okay. Megan took this opportunity to criticize his dad dancing. I thought it was funny. I laughed out loud, but I was crying on the inside because I knew that no matter how dorky Jason's dancing was, hey, my dad dancing is even dorkier. We are always good-natured about it, but it can be difficult to continue dancing in the face of the dad shaming that takes place by our family and friends. I think we should avoid dad shaming dad dancers, because all of us, whether dancers or dads, could use a little more dancing in our lives. And actually, I would agree with that last sentence. We all need a little more dancing in our lives. Dave really put me in my place. I feel, I want to say ashamed, but then feeling shame for shaming someone else, then you get in a shame spiral. It's a shame. Yeah, I just want to thank you, Dave. I want to get that email on a T-shirt and wear it around. I apologize for dad shaming. We all need more dancing in our life. And Dave, please send us a video of yourself dancing. And I promise not to make fun of you. We would totally play it. Yes, exactly. Exactly. By the way, personally, I wasn't offended. I thought it was funny. I know you weren't. Because when I feel like I dance like no one's watching. That's what I do.
You do.
That's like that's on a t-shirt, right?
Dance and podcast like no one's watching.
And we will do that next. No, we won't dance next, but we will podcast. But coming up, we're going to take a look at what makes up the average student of code. Those coders that are learning how to code. What makes up their kind of background and their demographic. But first, let's take a minute to thank Ors and Alps. They're the sponsor of this episode. This is where we talk about your skin. And by talking about your skin, I kind of have to talk about my skin. I've been using Ors and Alps. I have it right here. GQ calls Ors and Alps a new essential for your daily routine. And it's awesome. It's powerful skincare. It's made for a guy's dehydrated skin and active lifestyle. So if you're moving around all the time, you're out in the wilderness, you're going for hikes all the time, or you're a bike rider, or whatever. You're just living your life as a guy. Then you want to use this stuff. Face cleansing stick here, Ors and Alps face cleansing stick is the first men's solid face wash. You can see it right here. It's very unique. You just kind of apply it all on. It's spill proof. You splash it with water when you're done. It's activated charcoal that exfoliates your skin, pulls out impurities. We've also got, let's see here, the hydrating and anti-aging face moisturizer eye cream. We can get in on a little of the eye cream action as well. It's true. Non-greasy, fast-absorbing. And then also, of course, the no-nonsense natural deodorant right here. It nourishes your skin, but more importantly, I think, absorbs odor. Everything is super portable. It's TSA approved, made with powerful and natural ingredients that offer intense hydration, because that's what it's all about. Products last up to 3 months, though, depending on how you use it. You can get more time out of it if you like. And Ors and Alps products were actually developed by two women, Laura and Mia, for their husbands, who apparently weren't taking the best care of their own skin. So they partnered with leading chemists and created Ors and Alps to protect their husband's skin from extreme outdoor conditions that often resulted in dry, cracked skin. Laura and Mia also set out to solve a very common problem that I've encountered many times: spilled product in gym bags. It can get messy if it's not the right product. So they created the first solid face wash for men. Products are perfect to take on the go, gym, work, travel, wherever your next adventure takes you. And if you haven't already noticed, Ors as in rowing, Alps as in skiing, it's named after their husband's favorite outdoor activities. So your skincare, in this case, gets to keep up with your on-the-go lifestyle, and that's what makes it so awesome. And plus, it's a really great Father's Day gift, so you should definitely check this out for the guy in your life. Ors and Alps is offering the Twit audience a fresh start to your day. Join the thousands of guys using Ors and Alps. Visit orsandalps.com/twit to receive 15% off your first order. That's ORSANDALPS. That's orsandalps.com/twit. And we thank Ors and Alps for their support. Learning to code can be a big undertaking, and it's very important to know, for a number of reasons, to understand who is up to that challenge and why they're taking the plunge. Joining us to discuss the results of FreeCodeCamp's 2017 New Coder Survey is Quincy Larson. I wasn't here when you were on the last time, so welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. It's great to see you. So first of all, give us an idea of the scope of this survey and also kind of how it's being shared to the community at large, because it's kind of like you've posted it up on GitHub. It's like you've open sourced this data.
Right. So it's 20,000 responses from people who are learning to code. We asked each of them somewhere between 20 and 50 questions, depending on how they answered. So we have a massive data set that people can reference, that data scientists and researchers and academics can dive into. And our hope is that they'll be able to learn a whole lot about all the people out there that are learning to code.
Right on. It's a wealth of knowledge, at least from what you posted here, but this isn't the whole thing, right? Like this is kind of like a summary, and then you guys, and I'm sure others, are going to kind of go in there and pick it apart and figure out more big information about this. What are some of the, I mean, just kind of starting with the top category here, what are some of the more prominent goals of some of the budding coders, the people who are just learning? Like, what are their goals that they share?
Well, I'd say for most people who are learning to code, it comes back to simple economics. At the end of the day, they want to be able to get better jobs that being technical or even semi-technical open up for them. So they are learning to code primarily so they can get a job at a software development company or at one of the 80% of coding jobs that are outside of tech itself, working for, a store or a hospital or a bank. And another 40% of them are very interested in either becoming a freelancer and kind of running their own business or actually launching a product-focused business.
So when we talk about like diversity in Silicon Valley, when we look at the diversity reports from Apple or Google or Twitter, they aren't that great. But when you really think about who's getting jobs out there as coders, you talk about people getting jobs at stores and hospitals and banks. Are those coders more diverse than what we see in the Facebook diversity reports and the Apple and the other big companies? Can you tell from the study whether they're more diverse at other jobs that aren't necessarily in Silicon Valley?
So we did ask what sector people are working in, and we can kind of correlate that with whether they are actually working as a developer. But by the time we narrow the field down, we're talking about a few hundred results. So it's really hard to say with any level of certainty. Maybe somebody will be able to dive into the data and figure that out exactly. I can tell you that about 20% of the respondents who are learning to code are women, and I don't think anybody's satisfied with that number.
Yeah. You also noted in there that there are a bunch of different ways, obviously, to learn online. YouTube, podcasts, learning resources like, of course, Free Code Camp, plenty of others. And I mean, I feel like I get this question a lot, especially on like All About Android, people who are interested in getting into coding for Android, but they don't know where to start. What are some of the most effective resources pointed out here and otherwise from those who responded? What makes them so potent for learning?
Right. Well, as far as efficacy, we just asked what they found useful, and a lot of people use YouTube. They watch a lot of programming videos on YouTube. About 2/3, almost 3/4 of people who responded were watching videos on YouTube. And there are a lot of great YouTube channels that have screencasts and have, like we publish on our YouTube channel, conceptual whiteboard type videos where we stand in front of the whiteboard and kind of explain it like you'd get at a university, except in little 2-minute chunks. And then podcasts are something that is hugely useful that a lot of people haven't yet picked up on, but the people who have picked up on it swear by it, because if you're learning to code through listening to podcasts in addition to actually coding, of course, it's just a supplement, but you can listen to programming related content or podcasts about technology like This Week in Tech while you're driving to work or while you're exercising or while you're doing childcare or chores around the house. So it's a great way to multitask and learn and kind of increase the scope of your knowledge of technology in general.
I checked out one of the podcasts that was on the list because it was called Giant Robots Smashing Other Giant Robots. And how can you not download a podcast that's called that? And I listened to it, and it's one of those things that you get reminded of with podcasts. It's like all of a sudden you feel like you know these people. And I think with learning to code, that is great because it just makes you feel like, oh, I feel like I know these people. They have these jobs in coding. They know how to do this. I could learn how to do this too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you one podcast that I absolutely recommend everybody who's new to coding would be Code Newbie, which is a podcast by a woman who herself was relatively new to programming, and she created the podcast and she interviews other people who are relatively new to programming. So you get kind of the moral support and you get lots of the stories from the trenches, because at the end of the day, learning to code is just a matter of persistence. Anybody who has the drive and can continue to code through all the different, life getting in the way. And then, of course, when you're coding, you're constantly getting rejection and failing tests and things like that. Anybody who can do that can succeed. So this podcast, especially Code Newbie, is extremely useful for that.
I love that idea. I've thought of that before. What a great thing, because when you're on the other side, you're looking to get in. You're looking for people who are in your situation, maybe a little bit ahead of you, so that they can advise you and inspire you and stuff. So that's a great way to do it. Your study also found, I thought this was interesting, that the majority of the respondents live in cities of 100,000 people or larger. So, I mean, the majority basically in large cities, essentially. Why do you think new coders come from large cities in such high numbers?
I think, and this is purely speculation, but I suspect that people who are highly motivated generally are the ones that are willing to jump into something as ambitious as learning to program. They tend to be, if they were born in a small town, they're more likely to move for economic and career reasons, if not other reasons, to a larger city. And once they're in the larger city, of course, they can experience more rapid salary increase and more rapid promotions within their field. So I think that a lot of the people who grew up in smaller towns have already moved to mid-sized or large urban centers. That would be my guess as to why. I can tell you, though, that we have more than 2,000 study groups around the world, and a lot of them are in very small towns. Like, we have cities where there are only like 20,000 people, some of them even smaller, and they have study groups and they get together and code. And coding is something you can do anywhere. It's like our team at Free Code Camp is completely remote. We meet each other in person like a couple times a year, and that's it. Well, other than that, we're just messaging and emailing and hopping on screen shares together.
I think last time you were on, we talked about your piece about how to find people to code with in your area, so we can link to that too. What was the most surprising thing about this study?
Well, I think a lot of people don't realize how many veterans there are learning to code. Like 8% of respondents had served in their nation's military. Now, keep in mind, only about 43% of the respondents were here in the US, but that's a significant chunk of people who are learning to code who have previously worked in the armed services. And they probably have a whole lot of procedural knowledge and a lot of structure to their learning that they can apply. Another thing that jumped out at me is 3% of respondents are receiving some form of disability from the government. And Stack Overflow published their study of about 64,000 developers a few months ago, and they found that 1 in every 200 respondents was blind. So there are a lot of people with disabilities learning to code.
That's interesting. I mean, those two groups, veterans and people with disabilities, they have those characteristics. Many of them probably have those characteristics you talked about that are required to learn to code: resilience and kind of taking whatever comes at you. And so that makes sense, but that is surprising.
Yeah, absolutely. In aggregate, what ties it all together? What is the kind of drive that unites all of these people? I mean, is it money? Is it a challenge? What did you find?
I think it has to do ultimately with a desire to advance oneself. That's the theme that I seem to notice whenever I talk to people who are learning to code, and I talk to dozens of them every day. They want to get a better career. They want to get a career that is relatively automation proof. And if you think about it, coding is the practice of automating things. So by definition, it's going to be the last field that gets completely automated. If you're worried about your job getting automated. And of course, they want creative work too. And coding is creative. You're constantly solving problems. You're constantly solving new problems, because if you'd solved a problem before, well, you just use your code that you'd previously written to solve that problem. So if you think about it, you're constantly encountering problems that have never been encountered before. So that makes it like hacking away at the undergrowth and really going out there on a big adventure. So I think that sense of adventure and that drive for creative work, the fact that software developers are generally very well compensated and they get a lot of respect within the global community. And if you want to start a business, well, there's probably no single skill other than knowing how to run a business that would be more useful other than being able to develop software.
Yeah, I mean, developing software in this day and age is kind of it's lucrative because we live in the digital information age, and if you want to pick a career where you've at least got short to near long-term longevity, that's probably a good place to go. What's next for all this data? You've got all this information. Obviously, you guys are pouring through it. You spell out here, like we talked about a few minutes ago, that you're posting this all online. What do you hope will happen with all this information?
Well, we posted it on Kaggle.com, which is a large data science kind of portal where a lot of data scientists and researchers go to analyze open data sets like ours. And last year we had like 60 plus data scientists analyze the data and come to their own conclusions and share their analyses and visualizations. So we're hopeful it'll happen again this year.
Nice.
And so as far as people who've had success with learning to code with Free Code Camp, can you share any success stories of people that have graduated from the program?
Sure. So we have had more than 6,000 people who have gone through Free Code Camp and then gone out and gotten their first developer job. And there are a lot of stories I can share. For example, one guy was a carpenter and he decided he didn't think that working as a carpenter was sufficiently reliable with, he having survived one of the economic downturns that significantly affected new construction. So he just sat down and really coded really hard. And after about 5 months, he was able to get a job as a developer. He was able to do so without moving. Now, 77% of people who responded to our survey said that they would be willing to relocate to get a better job. Another story I can tell you is a young woman who she transitioned in less than 100 days.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really cool service, and educating around this and kind of, allowing people to kind of empower themselves to change their own lives. It's a pretty powerful thing. So it's really cool stuff. It's freecodecamp.com, and you should definitely check it out if you're interested in, kind of learning how to code and everything. And you can find the information. Now, the information is posted on GitHub. Do you also have it at freecodecamp.com where people can find it?
Yes. So if you go to freecodecamp.com, we've got articles about it, and it's on GitHub and it's on Kaggle.
Awesome. Right on. Well, we really appreciate you coming on to talk with us. Quincy Larson, of course, freecodecamp.com. Thank you again, Quincy. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank
have a great
you.
night.
After the break, Jason explores how to make art smile. But first, let's take a minute to thank Tracker, the sponsor of this episode. Life is supposed to be a journey of discovery, but how much of it do you waste trying to discover where you left your keys? You will never worry about losing your things again thanks to Tracker, a coin-sized tracking device that pairs with your smartphone. All you have to do is place a Tracker device on whatever you tend to lose. Keys, wallets, bags, pets. I'm guessing you don't lose your pets. They try to lose you, and that might be a bigger problem. But I've put a tracker on my dog, and it's been helpful. Use the Tracker app to find it in just seconds, it or him or her, meaning the pets. Track up to 10 devices at once on your phone. You can even track and ring the same device from multiple phones and Tracker accounts. You can customize two-way separation alerts so you're notified before you leave your item behind. What if you lose your phone? Just press the button on your Tracker device, or you can ask your Amazon Echo and your phone will ring even if it's on silent. If you need more help, the new Tracker Pixel comes with powerful LED lights so you can find your items in a flash. It's available in fun seasonal colors. With over 4.5 million devices shipped, Tracker has the largest crowd location network in the world, so you can find your item even if it's miles away. Try Tracker today with their 30-day money-back guarantee. Find what you've been missing. Go to thetracker.com and enter promo code TNT to save 20% on any Tracker package. That's TheTracker.com, promo code TNT to save 20% on any Tracker package. TNT's fan of the day is John Hatfield on Twitter, who sent us this picture taken while watching TNT while working. Coffee at the ready. I wish I had a cup of coffee.
No
Too many open programs. Got to keep the 911 center running smoothly.
No way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that work. My goodness.
Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or you set your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Use the hashtag #HowIWatchTNT and we're going to find it. I love when people post from what they do. I love knowing what you do. You can post from vacation, post with your pets. We love it. The fans of the day.
Patrick Delahanty here at Twit is in the chat room, says TNT is apparently 40% of the 911 center. It's true. we're roughly about that based on the screens that were being occupied by us. So thanks for that. Fair warning, this is by no means new news. Heck, it's not even news, actually, but it made me smile. I saw this a few weeks ago, and I know, Megan, you will love this because you're a fan of the filters and stuff. A freelance illustrator named Ollie Gibbs was roaming the galleries of Amsterdam with a purpose to take classic works of art and make them smile. Well, a better way to do that than with FaceApp, which we've covered many times on this show. His Twitter profile is @OllieOgg, and if you scroll through, you're going to see a number of these famous pieces of work, statues, all this kind of stuff that he then pointed FaceApp at that basically took that frown and turned it upside down. I mean, it's so well done. I mean, you look at these things and you would not know the difference. It makes me want to go to an art gallery with FaceApp and do this on my own because I would love to just see the results.
I have gone to art galleries and done face swapping.
Oh, really?
So that I put my face on. I've also done, Snapchat filters on the faces. It's embarrassing. People look at me like I'm an ugly tourist. And
you're doing that here?
Yeah. And I do it. Art is for everyone, and everyone should. I don't touch the paintings.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. Although you do somehow put your face on the painting.
Yeah, but not by touching it.
Yeah, I guess that's allowed.
Mm-hmm.
It's allowed. Well, how do they turn out?
They turn out great. I wish I prepared some, but I had kind of a busy day. But I'll tweet some because I did it and when we were in DC. So serious Smithsonian face swapping, and did it in some of the other museums. Yeah, only in DC. It is. The other thing that, as long as we're talking about face swapping,
yes,
I don't know if you got a chance to watch the terrifying video that was at the beginning of the WWDC.
No, I didn't see that.
So it's this video about what would happen if everybody stopped coding apps, if we would have to live in real life. It's like a, post-apocalyptic. I tried to say apocalyptic, but using the word apps instead. And so there's actual physical face swapping. So, surgery where, a husband and wife swaps their face. Take a look at it.
Is it good or is it just scary?
It's making fun of the ridiculous things we do with apps at the same time trying to tell people to continue coding apps. So it didn't fully make sense to me what they were saying, but I liked it.
It's like a sprawling epic. It's a 3-minute introduction to WWDC.
You're not going to watch it right now, but
by the way, yeah. But before we close the show, WWDC. The developers conference, at the end of the show being so full of hardware, did you feel like there was enough thrown to developers based on what you saw?
Well, I mean, the HomePod, I keep HomePod. A HomePod is where you live. That's what I can't. You live inside a HomePod. That's your HomePod. You open the pod bay doors. You know how it works. So I can't get used to it, but it's HomePod. That's for developers. I mean, develop away at that. It's not coming out till December. That was, what they were. But I mean, tools for developers. Yeah, there was the AR kit. Yeah. There was a couple of other APIs that they introduced. So I do think, I'm not a developer, so I couldn't really answer that question. But from if they were trying to make a consumer believe that enough was handed to developers, then they did a great job.
Yeah. That they walked away from that is that developers got a little something. I feel like consumers got a lot. There was a lot for consumers to chew on.
We should have asked Quincy that question. I don't know. If you're a developer, email us, tnt@twit.tv. Did you get enough handed to you at WWDC?
Yes, at the developers
conference. TNT@twit.tv. Not objects handed to you, but enough to work with. Enough.
Did you get any HomePods handed to you? If send them to us and we'll review them on the show.
I think I read on Twitter they were giving away jackets or something. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Sure. Okay.
I'm happy to be here. I would much rather be here than there.
I'm happy to have you here, too. TNT records live every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 2300 UTC. That's twit.tv/live. Like Megan said, TNT@twit.tv if you want to be a part of the show and send us an email. You can also leave us a short voicemail, 260-TNT-SHOW. And you can find us on Twitter @TechNewsTodayTV.
Share your thoughts on the stories we discuss in the TNT subreddit at technewstoday.reddit.com. Find all the ways to subscribe to our show at twit.tv/TNT. And you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts. It's not called iTunes anymore. So any podcast host that at the end of the show is saying subscribe on iTunes, they're wrong. It's called Apple Podcasts now. So call them on it. And if you want to tweet at me, I'm at Megan Maroney. And if you want to join us in the chat room, do that too. And quote Latin at us like Elpis did. I got to look up now what he meant in Latin. Go ahead. You go.
I don't know what that says. And I'm at Jason Howell on Twitter. Thanks to our technical director, Brian Burnett, and also today's editor. You got a few things to do there. We appreciate your efforts. Thanks to Burke for helping out here in the studio. Thanks to Kevin on another day, because I already thanked Brian, and thanks to you for talking tech with us today. Kevin, you sit down and you wait your turn. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
Forget you, Kevin.